I was like, oh man, whatever. She's like, yeah, I'm a rainbow baby and this, that, and other. And I told her, I said, something that I've heard often that always just kind of puts a weight on my heart, because I feel like it puts a weight on the responsibility of that child. That child is not just born because they just love you, but you now have the responsibility to carry all the hopes and dreams of all the babies that miscarry before you. And it's like, you shouldn't even know who could have been before you, because why do you even need to know that? I'm not saying don't tell your child, but to then say, this is what you are. You're this miracle. You're this
miracle baby.
Yeah. What if you want to sit around and, become a porn star? That's your life. You have not, what I'm saying? Whatever you want to do, you now have the weight of your parents' world on your back, thinking about all the things that you should be doing, because you are carrying the weight and responsibility and the souls, as she put it, of all of the children that could have been born before she was made. And it's just like, don't do that to a child. Let them just be their own individual something. Don't compare them or comprise their existence to, don't bring other things together to make their existence useful.
But in honesty, I mean, the act of having a child is one of the vainest, most selfish acts that a person can do. I want to see what I look like combining my egg with that sperm.
So yes, we do feel that way because we are child free. But I think the other people feel like, oh, I'm gonna love him, but they have different. People have a whole lot of mind, self-serving, unaware reasons why they want to have children. Oh, they feel obligated because of family. There's a billion reasons why people have children. But even if you're deciding to, my dog is soaring up a storm. But even if
you can barely hear him.
Okay, good. But even if it's your passion, it's not your baby's passion to carry the weight of the other children that didn't make it. That's my thing. You can have 75 babies. You can have 75 kids. If you would have had 76 but one lost its life, do not put that on the weight of your 75th child that you could have had a big brother. So you could have had a big sister. But see, what happened was, it's like, that's unhealthy. But see,
that goes back to another area of health that we really do need to expand our resources in, and that's mental and emotional health. Yeah. So, no one is born inherently knowing how to be an awesome parent. Yeah. All of it is really trial and error. You try to reach out to resources and whatnot. And most parents do their level best to do the best job they possibly can. Most parents do. And everybody comes at it differently. Oh, that brings me back to another thing too. We were talking about, it's best to give information to your child and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But then you add, because I'm going back into the sociological mindset, what if you're in a community where other people don't feel the same way as you? And I remember being in Iowa, and there were some things that were said in our houses that were not necessarily the same things that people prescribed outside in the community. Wonderful community that it was. My parents tended to err on the side of information. And if there was ever something they were uncomfortable talking to me about, they certainly didn't stop me from getting a book and, exploring it and then trying their best to answer my questions or getting me to someone who could answer a question that I had about something. I think in your house, y'all also tended toward more information, which is one of the reasons why our families really did get along with each other so well. But girl, some of our classmates in Iowa, I mean, I can take this totally out of the sex talk and tell you, because this was something I was waiting to tell you this on air. I accidentally ran across information on the first guy who ever called me the N-word in Iowa when I was in 3rd grade. I found him. I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to find him. I was looking for something else, and I saw him. And I thought, wow. And it took me to a whole different place. But I think about how poor his social education was at that point in Iowa, a place that was highly progressive when we were growing up there. But this guy, when he was a little boy, thought that the best thing he could do to hurt me was to essentially, I mean, it was a transformative moment. I think every Black person knows about the first time someone ever called them the N-word. And I look at that, I think, well, there were a lot of other things. I remember other stuff. This was the misinformation side of it. When it came to drugs, people still weren't really comfortable talking about drugs even then. That's why they created the DARE program. But they used to talk about how there was there was somebody who went and seeded ditches with marijuana this really did happen. There was a very weak strand of marijuana that grew in the ditches around Coralville when we were young, and kids would go and they would try to find it, and they would like chew on it, trying to see if they could go ahead and weird stuff. I mean, also people did tip cows and things like that. I mean, the things that you do when you're in a community where, you know, people are bored. And they just do weird things. So I can't imagine. I mean, when we were living there, people didn't talk about domestic abuse. I encountered a situation where I had a friend whose mother and bigger sister were being beat by the man who was living with them. And I thank and praise God that I had the parents that I had, so I could go and say something, and they did what they could, you know, within the law to try to get help for that situation. There are lots of taboo topics that can come up, even when you're in a university town where, generally speaking, people are rather progressive about what they feel. You know, they feel they're liberal, you know, that they're more accepting and stuff. But on the whole, when it comes to this subject, we don't fully take advantage of schools in doing a good job of educating on reproductive health. We don't maximize the church structure in that way. And you have to, now young people have the resource of the internet, which is wonderful, but highly unregulated. And so you could type in something and you could look up saying, you know, what does it mean if my dick gets hard, you know, and I can't get it to go down, you know? I mean, if you type certain keywords into Google, it could make our jaws drop. And it takes a lot for our jaws to drop because people are embarrassed. And so they go and they ask the great and glorious Google to find an answer for them. Well, Google's just a database. It's just going to try to pull based on keywords. It could send you to something that says that you should shove a broom up your woo-ha. I mean, how in the world is that a good idea?
But you know what? It's funny that you're saying that, because I think when it comes to with the topic of sex and sexual health, and on the topic of what is okay in your home is different than what's okay in other people's homes. I spoke about this a lot, but I lived in a very open, very comfortable household, and so I knew all body parts of every type of gender that there was, whatever, or that there is. And so there was nothing about the human body that confused me, that I didn't understand. It's just, we were just very comfortable people. And I remember we lived in an apartment, an apartment in Iowa, talking about Iowa. And there was a kid that was drawing what I found out to be a penis on the wall, because I didn't know what that was. I said, hey, because you know, you can take a rock and you can use the rock to draw a brick. You know what I'm talking about? So the kid's doing that, and I didn't know what that was. I'm like, oh, because I love to draw. And I'm like, well, what is that? And they were like, it's a penis. And I said, it's not a penis.
Whisper.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a penis. And I was like, it's not a penis. I was like, it has this. It's turned the other way, and it has hair. And I'm just going to town. And it's like, that's what I'm the artist that I felt that I was. And the adult came and said, what's that? And I was like, the kid didn't have it right. So I'm explaining and I was in kindergarten at the time. So I'm like, it's either kindergarten, first grade. I'm like, it's a penis. And they got all mad at me and sent me home. And I asked my mom about it. And I was like, Mom, they said I was being bad at it. And she's like, well, you know, there's a thing called private parts. You know how we put underwear on and we put shirts on and then we go outside? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, those things are private parts. And so some people take it private to the next level to where they don't even walk around their houses, in their homes, with their private parts out. They keep clothing on all the time. Blew my mind. So this person feels uncomfortable with their child knowing what those private parts look like, because they don't, show, they don't, whatever. And my mind exploded. And so I was like, so what's the punch though if people just are uncomfortable? But I'm like, what's nothing to be uncomfortable about? It's like arms and legs, and I didn't get it. And so she's like, it's just what it is. And so, no, you're not in trouble. It's totally normal, because this is just how we are. It's not a big deal. So, because I didn't want to get in trouble. I was a big kid, but I didn't want to get in trouble. That was my thing.
But that's how we learned there were things that were okay at home that were not okay outside. And it wasn't that we were doing wrong. It was that you got to be considerate of the people who are in your community and where they are.
Yeah. And so that was the thing. I remember that conversation, because she's like, it's all good, nothing wrong with it. Live your life. I understand what they said, but you're not wrong for that. Okay, fine. The other one was my dad and Santa Claus. So he was like, hey, in this country, you know, the parents lie to their children about Santa Claus. They lie to them. So you don't have to tell these children the truth. But if they ask you, you can tell them the truth. But they lie to their parents' ear. So I was like, okay, you know, because we weren't really raised specific. I knew what Santa Claus was, but I wasn't raised in Santa Claus to believe
Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy,
yeah, none
Easter
of that. We
Bunny,
did two
all that
things.
stuff.
We did other things, but it was like, you know, that's just how it was. And so when I went to school, we went to Iowa specifically because Santa Claus is big.
Huge in the Midwest. Huge.
Yeah, it was huge. So we went there and it was like, oh my God, what did Santa get you? Santa, 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 Santa. And I'm like, oh, this is what my dad was talking about. I'm being tested. So I was like, nothing. Because I didn't want to lie because he didn't give me nothing. My daddy got me everything, or my mom, or whoever. And they were like, he didn't get you anything? Oh my gosh, Santa didn't get you anything? And I was like, they're not going to let this go. And it was difficult to live like that. But it carried on to like fourth grade. Kids really believe in this. But my point being, again, is that if we're putting this on the topic of sex, if in your house people openly talk about sex and people openly understand reproductive health and people are open about how the body can do these things and those things and what these things are, it doesn't always mean that you can go into a space and a place where they're going to feel comfortable. And so that's the issue. If we are truly going to try to make a community that is open with this, there's going to be those who are like, I don't want my kids to know anything until they're having sex with someone and they're going to magically figure it out. It's like, oh, okay. Because even in Iowa, they gave us, we had to write, sign permission slips. And some kids that stepped out when they had the sex talk. Because we had
I remember
sex thing when I was in the fourth grade. That
was so weird though to do that. I mean, I get the respecting everybody, but it's just the idea that I guess now people have other options where they would say, well, if the public school is going to do that, since we were in public school, if the public school is going to do that, if I'm not comfortable, if I'm not ready for my child to have that, then I'm going to pull my child out of that structure and I will take responsibility for the education and introduce those concepts when I'm level ready. As a parent, you do have that right to do that because you are charged with the responsibility of rearing that child. Mm-hmm. I'm thankful my parents didn't do that to me because I'm a kid who needed information. And I'm a case where it was like you, there was no one worth me risking my wellness and well-being. There was, I don't care how cute, how smooth someone talked, nothing. And what was actually maybe the blessing of my growing up was that no one even really considered, for the most part, bringing that to me. I guess it's the way I carried myself. Maybe they were terrified of my father too. But I didn't have to bat away a whole lot. And in fact, at one point, I thought maybe something was wrong with me because I wasn't having guys approach me in that way. But remember, I said I had a lot of guy friends. One time I just asked them, I was like, dang, I mean, y'all go for this and that and that. And I'm like, and here I am. And I'm not saying I'm trying to get with you, but like, I don't get it. Like, I don't have, and people were like, Marta, no one's going to do that with you. Yeah. Because they know
yeah,
if they do that with you, then they're locked in, yeah. And a lot of guys aren't ready.
That goes back to what I'm saying with the population that is unfortunately given the moniker that it has, is that I'm not saying that all boys that were having sex in high school are boys that were going to try to hurt girls' feelings, but I think that naturally, just the nature of the hunger of what testosterone can do to a body and to a mind, they're listening to what you're saying, but they're like, what do I have to do for her to feel comfortable enough for me to sleep with her? And
so I can do this.
So I can do this. And I'm not going to hurt her, but I really want to use her body to ejaculate. So what do I have to do?
Because that's what it is. And that's hard to hear that. I gulped when you said it a little bit because it's like, that's not what you're talking. You're like, no, when he does that, it means he loves me and he wants to protect me and keep me safe. And
I say this often, and I say this to young ladies, and I say this to really young ladies. I said, young boys, for the most part, usually have already, masturbated and stuff like that by the time they're coming to present themselves to you. And they're literally looking at you saying, hey, my hand is awesome, but I would love if you would allow me, through conversation, maybe taking you out sometimes, if you could be my hand awesome.